Moving right into our next enhancement of Expected Service Provider. Now, to help you manage your PT commission structure, an Expected Service Provider can now be associated with service items such as personal training sessions. The Expected Service Provider is set by linking an employee with a service item and can be set and updated within many touch points in MoSo: POS, agreements, scheduler, and activity management. So because this touches ESP, as we're calling it, the Expected Service Provider, touches on so many different areas in MoSo, we're going to go through each of those areas so that you can see exactly how this may work within your business. So here we go into MoSo. To begin, we're going to look at how the Expected Service Provider is used within point of sale. So we've got our member, Mary member, and we're going to put her into point of sale because she would like to purchase some personal training. So we are going to go ahead and look at services. And then we're going to select a 5-pack of PT. Let's say she wants 5 PT sessions. Here, we will see that the Expected Service Provider is not yet set. So if your front desk generally sells personal training, but your trainers may get commission off of these packages, or it's just very important to know whose clients are associated with each package that they're purchasing, we can now edit the Expected Service Provider. So let's go ahead and put in a service provider. And there she is. She shows up right there. Tara Adler is going to be the Expected Service Provider for this 5-pack of PT. Now, every time Mary purchases a 5-pack PT in point of sale, Tara is going to appear as the Expected Service Provider. This is because now Tara is associated with Mary's 5-pack. If another member were to purchase a 5-pack, you could add the Expected Service Provider. If Mary does only 5 sessions with Tara and then she's going to do 5 more sessions with Frank, she can definitely change that service provider just by, again, going to edit, change the Expected Service Provider, and look up the new staff member that she's working with at this point. So if we add tender, I'm going to pay for these sessions with cash and then finalize the agreement. Great, so that's the first place that we can see Expected Service Provider. Now the second place we're going to look is within an agreement. So if you sell personal training as an agreement, this is going to be something you want to take a look at. So if we're going to go to agreements, new agreement, and we're going to sell Mary a personal training certification, or I'm sorry, an agreement, not a certification. Let's go to a service membership. We'll move on to next. We're going to sell her a PT agreement. And here we go. This is the place, right, where we would choose any installment options or take a look at everything that this bundle entails. This is where we can add or edit an Expected Service Provider. So we can start to type this person's name in. Eric Smith. Great. And then if we wanted to clear this to add someone else, if this member has decided that maybe this particular trainer is not going to, is only going to be her service provider for just a few sessions, we would still put the Expected Service Provider in here because there are other places that we can edit this. So Eric Smith is still going to be the Expected Service Provider. We click next. We're moving on to finalize the agreement. And there we go. If you can see right here, the Expected Service Provider is listed as Eric Smith for this 50-pack of PT. Add tender and finalize the transaction. Great, so we've covered the point of sale, and we've covered in the agreement where you would see Mary's Expected Service Provider. Now let's go ahead and look at the scheduler. So within Scheduler, if Mary's going to schedule a personal training appointment, QS is going to be her service provider today. Let's go ahead and schedule an appointment for 3 p.m. So we'll right click, we'll create an appointment. We'll look up Mary, and then she's going to pay with a prepaid activity, and her prepaid activity, she's going to train with Eric today. So now we see that the expected service provider is Eric Smith. However, the employee that's going to be performing the service today is QS. That's the employee's name, QS. So we can set the time for what time that is going to take place. Let's say 3 o'clock p.m. And then we're going to select schedule. Now we're going to see an alert because the expected service provider, the ESP for this service is Eric Smith, but the appointment is scheduled with a trainer other than Eric Smith. So if this is absolutely what I want, I can click yes. If this is not what I want and I only want Eric Smith to be the service provider and the expected service provider, I would select no and I would have to reschedule. So I can click yes, and there we go. We now have this particular service scheduled. So that is what this will look like within Scheduler. It's going to ask you if it's a different trainer than the expected service provider. It wants to make sure that you're aware of that and that this is something that you want to happen. So finally, let's look into activity management. For items sold with an expected service provider, the ESP will display under that item, or with that item, I'm sorry, under both the redemption and the history tabs. So if we look here, we can see that the expected service provider is listed and the expected service provider is listed here. If you wanted to edit that service provider, you could just edit this and you could type in someone else's name and then it would change the service provider. So let's say she used her 5-pack with Tara. She really, really liked it. So she wanted Tara to then redeem every session in her 15-pack, or 50-pack, I'm sorry. So if the service provider was in fact Tara, if we're manually redeeming sessions, we could do that. Or if you just wanted to change the service provider for that particular package after a few of those sessions have been trained out, you can do this here as well. So please note that for activity management, a new permission was created called Change Expected Service Provider, and the user can update the ESP within activity redemptions as well as activity history. If the permission is not set, the user will not be able to update the ESP within activity redemptions or activity history. So that's going to be really important. You'll probably want, I would say your fitness manager is more like, to have this this privilege or this permission to change. Maybe this isn't something that you would want to give every personal trainer if they could just change each package to their own. So different things that you want to consider before you go live using Atlas.